Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking, based on their individual personal experience. They do not intend to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So you know that pain, the stress, the struggle that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace and keep your sanity, all while assisting your attorney as you go through the process, saving you thousands of dollars as you move through the process. My name's Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And joining me here today, and we're going to see if I can say his name right, is Ari Ehrlich. And I kind of butchered it right there at the end. But Ari is also known, as you can see in his logo here, as Rabbi Flow. Rabbi Flow is a life and relationship coach, intuitive guide, and mentor based in Israel. I find that really wonderful. And just so that you all know, he's here in the middle of his night to join us. So we have to make sure that we welcome him. So Rabbi Flow's work blends modern coaching and somatic tools with timeless wisdom from Jerusalem or from Judaism. Say this all right. So Rabbi Flow loves helping men and women navigate love, intimacy, and the art of conscious relationships. So welcome, Rabbi Flow. I am so glad that you're joining me here today.
Happy to be here, Tina.
Thank you. And we talked briefly just beforehand, and I said, well, yeah, it's in the middle of the night. And he says he also has a cold. So he's doing this to be here with you guys and to give this information to you. So thank you so much again for being in the middle of your night and not feeling well and still coming. So
It's a pleasure.
I find the fact that one that you're based in Jerusalem to be such a wonderful aspect, especially where you are a rabbi, and and then the fact that as you help people with their love and intimacy, and I love conversations around intimacy. A lot of people don't understand that, and I've had a couple of relationship professionals talk about intimacy, even different on two different sides of the relationship thing. So, what made you decide to come and do this stuff?
Um, the coaching in general was a calling. I really hadn't found a career path that was satisfying to me until I went into really helping people. And when I did that, I discovered that I had more capacity for reading people, intuitively guiding them than I had thought. Um, and so one of those discoveries over the years, especially within the past year, has been relationship coaching two people at the same time and how to relate to each other, which is an entirely different skill set and requires the holding of a presence that's large enough to hold two people that are often in conflict one with another, which is much different than holding presence for one person who you have no conflict with at all. Or a person who's really in conflict with themselves. So that was really it just kind of flowed out of work with individuals who were talking about struggles they had in their relationships. And one of them asked if I could see him and his wife, or she asked if I could see her and her husband together. And we tried it out, and lo and behold, I discovered that I could do that too. So it just started working out really well. I started talking about it. More people came, and it also worked well. So it just it somewhat snowballed from there into like a huge focus of what I do now.
Awesome. So, because you actually use Judaism in your bio, because you're going in that, do you find that you are working with more people that are Jewish, or is it just a mix?
No, no, the wisdom really applies universally. And I've often have heard stories even from other cultures and faiths that I use because wisdom is wisdom and truth is truth, and you take it where you can get it.
Amen. So I myself, I'm not a relationship coach by far. And my work sometimes crosses in because I do mediation work, not to separate families. I actually do mediation to keep a family, more so parents and children, together because we have young children that have gotten in trouble with the law, CPS, or something to that effect. And so I just recently had a situation with a husband and wife where, as you were talking, I was picturing everything that we went through. And I'm not coaching them. I am giving them a couple of tools in the communication because we've got to get a child back in the house. And I find what you just said there, that the wisdom, it doesn't matter where they come from. And in this specific situation, we have two ethnic groups, two totally opposite ethnic groups that are raised, in opposite culture looks. One is very strict and the other one is not strict at all. And that point where spirit comes in and gives you guidance, I feel that, yes, I like the word calling, but I feel very privileged to be in that seat where spirit has asked me to hold space for these people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, I mean, in the end, that's really what holds people together is a deeper spiritual connection and a value system that says that the unity of us is more important than anything else that can tries to get in the way.
Hmm.
When people start to discover that, experience that, taste and feel that become a reality, then the other issues tend to dissolve.
I agree with that. And I had this conversation with one person from a family member or from the family whole. And when I was talking with them, they came in and they were talking real fast, real loud, trying to get their point across. And as I was talking with them, the holding the space is so important. And I work through things to where I just ask questions. That's my job, is to try and figure out what's going on. Not so much me figure it out, but the client I'm working with to figure it out. And I pointed out to them after we had spent almost 2 hours together. I'm like, have you noticed that you're not raising your voice? You're not talking fast. And they're like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even noticed.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, connected to what I alluded to earlier, which is when you hold the space for the two of them, um, you know, you find a way to help people regulate their nervous systems with each other. And I think a lot of what really helps people make lasting changes is helping them become aware of when these things are happening within them. Like when you said, well, do you realize that you're calm now? And they're like, oh, wow, I am. Because if a person notices when they're calm, then they also start noticing when they're stressed. And if they notice when they're stressed, they start to pause and think, wait a second, maybe what my mind is telling me is not true. And that pause saves situations from getting worse and really saves relationships entirely when you develop that pause of awareness of realizing, hold on, this is not going where it should go. And then you get the reins and the control back.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking, there's an incident where I was working with a couple a few months ago, and I get to the end of my work, and I always like to say me their takeaway. But then because of the organization that I work with, we have other mediators or coaches that are in the background that's helping support the family, right? And in their communication with their coach, the first thing that they said when they were asked, so what did you take away? So now it's a day or so after, right? They said, well, I took away that I need to take my wife out on more dates. I thought that was kind of interesting because that didn't come out when we were talking. So how often do you see, or let me re-ask that question. What kind of changes do you see usually first in the coaching process when you're working with a couple?
Um, well, you never really know. Like people are very different in how they change. Like and the example you gave was like a really good example in the sense that you didn't talk about something, but something about what you talked about clicked, probably because this is something that this person heard before, or something that they were thinking of doing, but this weren't pulling the trigger on it. And they realized, oh, that little voice in my head that said to spend more time with my wife. Oh, now I know that I should listen to that because something in the conversation revealed to him that by not listening to it, things were going to go in the wrong direction. So I think that when you're doing, when a session is going well, when a session is going well, dialogues are forming. They're forming between the people in the session, between me and the clients, between the two people sitting in front of me and each other. And there's also dialogue forming within themselves. So the fact that this person thought of an idea that you didn't even speak about means that his internal dialogue was opened. And he's changing, which means that he'll show up differently, which means that his wife will respond differently now to him because he's coming in a different energy, in a different way. So it's hard to describe exactly what it is because it can be so different depending on the needs of the people and the problems they're presenting. But the overarching theme in any conversation, any therapeutic conversation, good coaching conversation that's going well, is that things that were stuck are opening up and things that were hidden are becoming revealed. And things that used to feel too unsafe to like get near are open out and exposed, and we actually feel okay doing it. We're not flooded and overwhelmed by it, which is something that a person a person and a practitioner both need to be very cautious of, which is in the effort to try to fix something, not try to pry open things that aren't ready to be opened and make it worse. So it's a
Mm,
delicate process.
yeah, that actually happened to me. I was going through training years and years ago. And in my life, there had been some molestation that took place. And it came something that was in the therapy that we were doing that day that we were practicing. This came out, and I wasn't ready for it. And the practitioner thought it would be just good kind of training to demonstrate what can happen through going through this therapy, what you can bring out. And because I wasn't prepared for that, it took me probably 2 years or longer to actually come to a place that I could grasp what I had learned on that day and take and put all the pieces to my puzzle. So I really like that you say that, sometimes we as a practitioner, whatever we are serving our clients as, that we need to make sure, and this to me, this is where this connection comes in. If we try not to be overly human and just think our way through it and let our heart work our way through it, I think that we tend to process things best. And in my case, I don't know how you work. I don't open those boxes for my clients. I dig into the box and let them open it from the inside out.
Yeah. So I think it's a really important topic, especially I think today there's a lot of people doing things that are designed to bring up a lot all at once. And it's important to know that there are no shortcuts. So, like when you take the risk of doing something that's designed to do a lot very quickly, let's say by taking, for example, a psychedelic, which is like I'm not against it, but when you do something like that, or as a practitioner, you try a technique. Like there's certain techniques that are going to really bring things up for people. Hypnotic techniques or different techniques designed to simulate, unconscious patterns that are usually hidden. Um, when you do that, you run, number one, the risk that it's going to go very not well. And, you dug the person into a bigger hole because the person's come expecting something therapeutic and has now just been re-traumatized. So there's not just trauma from their life, there's trauma from healing the things in their life. So now they're doubly stuck. And then within the realm of working with a couple, now there's not just trauma in the relationship, but there's trauma even when it comes to trying to fix the relationship. So now they're even doubly stuck. But on top of that, even if it goes well and very well, now you have to deal with integration, which means the really good feeling that you feel from this process is going to fade, and you're going to come back into real life. And now you're going to have to work backwards to get to where you did in that moment of that session or that experience. And you're going to have to deal with the disappointment that no, it's not going to be easy and it's going to be hard. And now that you've tasted what it could be, you're going to be, in some points, maybe even less satisfied with those small steps that you're making, because they're not quite to that experience that you had that you want to get back to. So you have to be very, very careful. I think that people don't value enough the impact of gentle progress in the right direction. Nothing fancy, nothing too crazy, nothing to talk about, nothing to write home about, but just simply we had a conversation and we were able to discuss something and we figured it out. And you figure one thing out, you figure another thing out, you work one thing out, you work something else out. When you can do that consistently over time, you build a trust with your spouse, you build a trust within yourself, and then you end up really accomplishing much more than you realize that you're accomplishing, because you're just doing it in baby steps as opposed to in desperation of trying to like release it like a huge chunk. Like I used to approach therapy for myself that like, oh, I just want to get rid of this stuff. I just want to feel better. I just want to do something that's going to make it better. It doesn't work that way. We go through what we go through for a reason. It's part of who we are, and we need to learn from it and realize it was part of our experience. And so it's not something to reject. It's not something to throw out or trash. It's actually something to have deep thinking about, really integrate, learn from, and be able to actually thank God, the universe, whatever you believe in, for the experiences that you have because they've shaped who you are. It's really embracing a whole self, which is done very well in a much more, typically done well in a much more gradual process. Although sometimes there are situations where you could use a boost. So I'm not negating all the other techniques and stuff out there. It's there for a reason, but it's important to know what the risks and the pros and cons of different approaches are and to really give it a good gut feel or a gut check or a really good thought in terms of what you think is best for you in the season that you're in.
And, I like the fact that you say gut check. I believe in our intuition very much so. I believe that that's where God talks to each of us at, is through our intuition, through the gut, or however people want to look at that, through the heart. And I think that's super important. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted you to come on after we had talked that first time. Your connection with spirit to me was great. And everybody has a different look. I had a gentleman on the show here a few weeks back. His name is Jose, and Jose came from Mexico. And we were talking about the deviations of single fatherhood in Mexico. So he's an American, but he works in the co-parenting aspect. And it's rare to have a man come into that field. And then we have, I think I've actually talked to more male coaches that are working in the relationship coaching field than females. And I find that to be extremely interesting and wonderful, because I think that most men, and I know I deal with men in my work all the time. That's who I focus on. And the men that come to me, they struggle with their communication skills about specific topics. They might be able to talk about their work and their certain things very well, but when it comes to talking about, say, intimacy, one, they may not have all the dots connected even to even get to where they need to. And I think being able to come to the table with a male coach is super great for them. So do you find that in the work that you're doing?
Um, yeah, I definitely think that when you're coaching men as a man, you can talk to a man as a man, and when you're coaching women as a woman, you can talk to, a woman as a woman, And so there's definitely advantages wherever you are in terms of how you communicate. In terms of like as a man working with women, I think one of the advantages of that is you can tell a woman what it's like for a man that in a way that a woman couldn't. So you try to do the best you can, based on who you are and who you're working with. But in terms of what you said about men, very often I've noticed in individual and in couples work that men who are very, very intelligent and very good communicators and very well thought out people are lacking a certain emotional literacy that once you start making just a few connections for them, they can pick it up really quickly. Like I worked with a couple where I was like really not sure if it was going to work because the guy was like such a guy kind of a guy. He was so not into this kind of stuff and this work, and I was like afraid I'd be able to communicate or get through to him. And to my surprise, like every single concept I tried to teach him, once I explained it to him in a logical way, he got it and he applied it so quickly to the point where like this is a marriage that's been going on for decades. The son's going to college, almost considering divorce. And within 3, 4 months, they were so happy that they just didn't need to work anymore. It was like really, really astounding to see. So it's yes, some men they have their lives together, they have their work together, they have their friendships together, but intimate conversations, they just never really got the language and were given just the very subtle touch points that they needed to figure it out. And once they're given to them, they get it and they do really well. One of the stories I can give that would best describe this is from a book called Kids Beyond Limits by Anat Baniel, which is, I think, the book that's most influenced my life in terms of who I am and how I work. Um, it's a book about Anat's experiences dealing with kids with many different challenges, like autism, cerebral palsy, and other things. But it's really a book about understanding how the human brain works. And one of the stories in that book that she tells is about a child that had a certain procedure done when he was born, or she was born. I don't remember now if it was a boy or a girl. We'll just say for the sake of this one, she was born, and her body was the lower body, trunk and legs were in a cast for the first 6 months of life. And so when the cast was removed, everything was normal about this baby, other than that it wouldn't move its lower body. Like its legs stayed fused together as if they were actually fused together. But like anatomically, physically, they weren't. But no OT, PT, or whoever else they took this kid to was able to get the kid to move its legs independently. And she was already like 2 years old and like stiff as a board. Um, so Anat, approaches her and studies her and realizes this girl's brain has not yet even mapped out that there are two legs. Like you see it, you see a girl with two legs, you think, how could she not realize she has two legs? But the truth is that like we don't really see or understand things about ourselves unless we get to feel them, unless we experience them. Otherwise, we don't see it. Um, And so what she did was a very clever idea is she asked this girl, what's your favorite animal? And she said a dog. And she drew a dog on her right knee. And he said, what's your next favorite animal? And she said a cat. And she drew a cat on her left knee. Then she said, look, dog on this knee, cat on that knee. And the child immediately went into a trance and did not realize that this girl's brain for the first time is mapping that she has two legs. And then after they tried so many times to force this girl's legs to move independently of each other, Anat started to gently touch her legs and move them separately one from the other. And eventually she learned how to do everything she needs to do and is walking probably today. Um, so, and I've seen this in my work countless times where people can be incredibly stuck, like they're emotionally stuck, like this baby was physically stuck, because it's not because of some deep issue with their mother or their father or some deep trauma you have to uncover. Sometimes it's really simple. This person just hasn't made a connection, an emotional, a mental, emotional connection with how they experience their feelings. Just like this baby didn't make a connection between how she was experiencing her legs and her body. And as soon as you show that to someone and you just help them become aware of it, the brain's like, oh, I got it. And now it's fine. And now it just runs with it. And it's like it understands it immediately.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't even know how that started, but I hope I answered your question.
Oh, I love that. One of the things that I've had to help parents understand when they're taking care of little kids, a lot of times I'll have grandparents that have ended up with a child due to the family situations, and they're like, I don't understand this kid. And I explain to them, well, that child hasn't developed the EQ, the emotional knowledge that they need to know. They don't know what sad is versus mad. So you have to help them understand. So does this feel like you're mad, that you're angry and make the face? Or does this feel like you're sad and then make the face? Then the child actually goes, oh, this feels sad. And then they're able to label that emotion. So when you were talking about the legs, that was the visual that I was getting. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so, making the neural connections, just like you said, in this child didn't know that it could move its legs, didn't know it even had legs. And it's just because those neural connectors hadn't learned to fire back and forth yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important, even us as adults, and there's so many adults. And I don't want to blanket this over the men, but men were raised, and hopefully we're starting to see some of this shift a little bit. Other what I call old world cultures, like there in Jerusalem, even it's that the man does a man's work, the woman does a woman's work. She's the mom, and he brings home the food, whatever, to the family, right? So we have these fathers that have never been taught as little boys that they have emotions. And they're taught not to cry. You fall down and hit your knee. Well, don't cry. You've got to be a big boy. Well, now they're an adult and they lose a family member. Well, they don't cry because crying means that you're a wimp. And that is not the way to handle your emotions. Locking them inside your body hurts your physical body down the road.
Yeah, I mean, this opens up a whole nother discussion, which is like what really is masculinity and femininity? What is the role of a man versus the role of a woman? And I think that I don't think that people had it wrong in previous generations, but I do think that current generations don't interpret correctly what was really going on in healthy. I mean, there's always been healthy marriages and unhealthy marriages. That's why there's always been marriage and divorce. But very often, like you see a way that a culture has of doing things, and you don't really understand the reasoning behind it. Even the people doing it don't understand the reasoning behind it or the depth behind it. You have this with like many spiritual traditions. I've met people in my faith and other faiths who, have radically different understandings of their own text and their own tradition. And, both have experiences of seeing people, people that are more spiritually aware and conscious all know that most of what's being done in their respective religion is a misinterpretation of the truth. Um, and that's rampant in every single community, and everywhere because, the truth really is a higher level of self-awareness, which is hard to come by. That's really, it's growing and people are learning more, but it is hard to come by. And so That's just the reality of what it is. But, a healthy man wants to be there, wants to show up, and enjoys that he's taking care of the people around him. There's a lot of satisfaction in that, a lot of satisfaction in being someone that people can rely on no matter when and no matter what, which means at times that his feelings are not necessary for the conversation or the moment right now. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be felt. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be discussed. It just means that he's big enough to know what's the appropriate time to talk about them and how to talk about them and who to talk about them with and what's the goal of the conversation that he's having. Because he has to be sure that in any conversation that he leads or is a part of, that those he's talking to, whether it's his kids or his wife, will feel safe and provided for in an emotional way as well as a physical one. And that's a very, very difficult and nuanced thing to do. If a man is not vulnerable with his wife and open about his emotions, she will feel that she doesn't have him. She will feel that he is distant from her, and he will feel distant from her. And it will cause a rift between them. But if he's open and vulnerable in a way which feels unsafe to her, that also won't work. So it takes a lot of you know it it's and so I think that the emotional development of a man is a very, very complicated process, um because you are always juggling your role as a protector with the reality that you're a very vulnerable and fragile human being. Um, and so I think that a lot of men today are either moving to the protector side and negating their feelings, or moving to their feeling side, but they're forgetting their role as a provider and a protector. And they're just, if I feel this way and this is what I'm feeling, I just need to say it and act according to it. But that basically means no one can rely on you or depend on you. Um, you know, because you're all over the place flowing with your feelings. Um, whereas a woman's role is different. She should be honest and open with her feelings, and he's supposed to be there to hold the space for her. So, and that's the beauty of the relationship are those different roles. So yeah, so that's a whole nother thing.
I I loved how you explained all that. That was to me a beautiful way to explain that, especially where we're looking at things that are interpreted. Ugh. When we don't understand how things are interpreted, then we'll make the wrong assumption, and then we're doing the wrong thing. We're going too much, like you say, to one side or too much to the other side. I was lucky. I was raised by a father who cried. My dad would go out and watch the baby calves be born, and he would say, "This is God's miracle." And he would just have tears in his eyes every season when we would watch them. And then later in life, Kleenex commercials come on and he's crying from Kleenex commercials. And then I have two boys, my oldest who can't cry. That pain is too much for him to tolerate. So he tends to take things in the comical side. And I can't tell you, but maybe twice in his life, and they were more so from anger when I've seen him cry. He is connected to those feelings. He knows what they are, and he loves his wife, gives her that space, holds her when she cries. He understands all of that. He's a wonderful man. And then we go to my other son who can cry just like my dad. Just Kleenex commercial and he cries. And I find both of them to be very accepting of those emotions, even though my oldest won't cry. He does have an EQ. He understands that. He just doesn't like to go there.
Yeah, I mean, people are very different, but there's many ways to get the job done.
Hmm. Yeah. And so one thing, we're getting ready to come towards the end, but one thing I want to point out is that I have heard so many stories, and my late husband is one who would talk about all of his therapy, his marriage counseling. And nothing against any marriage counselor, because some of those counselors and therapists are amazing, amazing. And my late husband talked about going to, I don't know how many counselors he actually went through, or his wife went through. She didn't like them because they wouldn't point the finger at him as being the wrong. They didn't point it at her either, but they just dug and dug and dug. And he went through 17 years of counseling. And I truly feel, in dealing with all of you guys that do relationship coaching, that a relationship coach, in fact, that's where I, for the most part, send all my clients that are not sure they want a divorce and they can't work their side out with me. I send them as a couple to a relationship coach, because I truly believe, just like you said, in just a few months, that couple who was thinking of divorce, they totally were on the other side of that coin. I think as a relationship coach, you guys build as opposed to dig. Do you feel that?
Um, yeah, I mean that's a general issue with therapy. I would say that there's pitfalls on the therapy side and the coaching side of things, whether it's relationship coaching or any coaching or relationship therapy or any therapy. I think that what you really want to be cautious about in therapy is, does this have a direction? Like, does this have a direction? Like, because digging has no direction. Building does. So, like, I don't dig with people. I try to build with them. But if as I'm building, they keep on avoiding building, so then I'm like, okay, look, there's an issue here. Like, I confront them gently, but confront them like, we keep on talking about this. You're not doing it. This keeps on coming up. We got to dig, at least to figure out what's in the way of what we're trying to get to over here. Um, so I think that with therapy, you have to be very careful that you are moving in a direction. Whenever clients initially talk to me before we decide to work together, so I give a free consult. I always tell them that, you take it month by month. If you feel better at the end of the month, worth what you paid, so do another month. If you don't, then don't. Like, don't let anyone string you along telling you that, it doesn't mean that you're going to expect things, 20 years of a bad relationship to get better in 2 months. Um, it just means that, are you making meaningful progress or not? Are the habits that you're learning, the do things that you feel, or the emotional environment in the home, are those improvements worth what you're paying? Are they worth the time that you're putting in? Are they getting you what you want? So with therapy, you have to really make sure it has a direction. Um, you know, and with coaching, the issue with coaching is sometimes when you just try to direct people on a path and build, you don't really deal with the real issues that are holding them back. A lot of coaches are be like, oh, if you follow my program, if you follow my system, it'll work. And they give it to you and you don't follow it. Why don't you follow it? Because there's stuff blocking you from doing it. You forget, you don't make time for it, something's in the way, fears come up, and it's like you need someone who's going to really hold your hand and support you. When I interview a coach who I want to work with, I ask them, like, how do you handle it when people don't do the things you're giving them to do or find it difficult? And some will be like, well, look, that's not my job to hold your hand. You got to man up and do what I'm giving you to do. And some of them are more nuanced and they'll be like, well, we got to figure that out. Why aren't you doing it? Those are the coaches that I like to work with, who are really going to do that. They're coaches who have a therapeutic flavor to them. And the therapist I would want to work with is a therapist who has a coach flavor to him or her, who has a direction, is going to be focused on getting you there as opposed to just digging. So is that an answer did that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. You did a great job of answering that. In fact, I, it's just one of those things that the therapist, and the coach direction. It's what's going to work for the individual. And it's funny you talk about coaches, because the coach that you just gave to my coach, that when I interview, they've got to be able to do both. Got to do it. You got to do it. Oh, but you can't do it. Well, let's figure out why, or we're not going to be able to get over the obstacle. So I completely understand, and I help my clients build questionnaires when they get ready to go for the attorney, which is obviously what you're talking about for your own personal self. So I know all of your contact information is going to be below the show, but can you tell people how they can actually get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is, you see it on the screen, rabbiflow.com, just RABBIFLOW.com. You go there, you'll see the website, a little blurb about what I do, and some testimonials, video testimonials from my clients, and all my contact information is there. If you want to text, my phone number is there. If you want to email, my email's there. And if you want to set up a free call to get to know each other and discuss what's going on and get a feel for what the work is like, then there's a booking link there to book a free consultation. And if you say that you heard about it from this podcast that Tina sent you, you can put that in the notes when you book the call. And if you do sign up, you'll get the first month half off.
That is a great offer. And I encourage everybody, especially if you're on the fence about divorce, I don't recommend divorce. Divorce is like the worst thing that could ever happen to you. It's like just standing outside of your house and watching your whole house burn down with your family inside of it. Okay. It's going to destroy your whole life that way. So before you go that direction, I recommend you giving Rabbi Flow an opportunity to communicate to you about how he may be able to help you. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm a certified divorce coach. That means that I have been taught through the complexities of divorce. Not only have I learned those through textbook, excuse me, I've also experienced those. I've experienced abuse. I have witnessed abuse with my father, almost being murdered in one of his relationships. I witnessed the abuse that my late husband went through. So I've been through the broken bones. I understand, and I've learned. I understand divorce. That is what I'm here to help you with. You can reach me through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. You can also reach me on social media. Well, we'll back up. My actual website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And then on social media, I'm on Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's Huggins. LinkedIn, I'm under Tina Huggins. And then Instagram, I'm under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn. And then on TikTok, I'm under Divorce Tina. So Ari, can you give our viewers a last little bit of advice?
Yeah, I would say that, if you're a couple who feels like this isn't working out, one of the things that, it's like the good and bad thing about marriage is that it can get really bad or really good really quickly. It can sometimes have a bipolar nature to it because it's such a delicate and sensitive thing. When it goes well, life is so good, and when it doesn't, life really sucks.
Mhm.
Um, but like, very often, very complicated disputes that appear on the outside like there is absolutely no way out of them. There's no way to reconcile them. Are more often than not, I think, other issues deeper that are actually simple to fix. It's not like they're easy to fix, but they're simple. Like they're just simple core issues, just things that balances the dynamic and things that you just need to know and just enough literacy in terms of how the dynamic of a relationship works between a man and a woman that you just have to learn and understand. And when sometimes just knowing that and realizing and getting that literacy, it really changes. It can change things very, very quickly. It is a very complicated thing to know, when is this just, when is it time and when is it, time just that is just it also is a gut thing, something you have to follow your heart. But for someone who is like, looking at the relationship and doesn't know, like, I would say if a person really feels deep in their heart that it's just not going to work and they know that, then I'm not here to convince them otherwise. But if the reason why you think it's not going to work is because in your mind you don't see a solution, then I would say your heart wants it to work, but your mind just doesn't see a path. Then, there are things I can show you that I've seen re that's repeatedly many times that when I show them to people, it really opens things up.
And I basically kind of gave our audience my advice earlier when I said, I don't want you to get divorced. I would rather you go to Rabbi Flow and fix things before you decide that divorce is your final option. I hear people all this time, they're just like, I've only been married for whatever time, and this is their third marriage or whatever. I'm just not going to put up with it. It's like, did you love them? Because if you love them, that love is still there. The love doesn't die. It just goes away, and we've got to rekindle that. So I do encourage you, please go to rabbiflow.com and make that appointment, talk with him, because that's the better direction. It's the cheaper direction to go as well. And oh my gosh, it feels so much better to have that love in your life than to have the conflict that I have to help people go through. So I want to let the people know that those of you who don't know, when people get into a place that they see no way out, suicidal ideation usually comes to play. And I myself got into that place 6 months after I left my husband. I attempted suicide. It is not a place you can be alone. When you get to that place, you need to make a phone call. Call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, simple 3 numbers, 988. It's the same number in Canada, 988. Talk to that person. Talk until they talk you off of a ledge. It is not a place to be on your own. You can also reach the Suicide Prevention Hotline in the Netherlands at 113. So if you are in a situation where you need the police there right now, call 911. I encourage you to press charges against the other person. This is your key out of an abusive relationship. Press charges, get a restraining order, and keep those charges pressed. Follow them through. This is your time to work on the divorce and get out of this abuse. If you drop those charges, many times the abuse that comes after the charges are dropped is much worse than the abuse that was there before. So placing those charges, keep those charges, and work towards the divorce. You can call for the police officers here in the United States at 911. In the Netherlands, it's 999. In the UK, it's 112. The domestic violence hotline number is 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. I ask that you please like, comment, and share so this can help other people. Thank you, Rabbi Flow, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tina, for having me. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I wish everybody well.